There are two people I want you to picture, and they are sitting in two different rooms doing two different things, and neither of them thinks they are making a financial decision right now.
The first person is filling out a form. It might be on a phone, in an app, or on a glossy screen at a bank counter. Most of the fields are routine. Name, address, the things they could type half asleep. Then they reach one field that makes them pause. It says, simply, annual income. And for a second, just a second, they hover. Not because they don't know the number. They know it. They pause because some quiet part of them is doing math that has nothing to do with taxes. They're wondering what happens if they round up. They're wondering what the higher number unlocks. They're wondering, without quite saying it out loud, whether a bigger figure will make the system say yes to them faster. The second person isn't filling out anything. They're looking at a plan. Maybe it's a notebook with neat handwriting. Maybe it's a document they've reopened 40 times, or a folder of saved videos, or an app with a goal in it. The plan is good. It's detailed. It has a future self in it, a calmer version of them, with margin, with options, with a kind of financial quiet they can almost feel, and they've researched it. They've refined it. They've talked about it with people they trust. But there is no first move in it. There is no date. There is no transfer that has actually happened. No call that has actually been made. No account that has actually been opened. The plan is a beautiful room they keep redecorating but never move into. I want you to notice something about both of these people because it's the thing this whole episode turns on. They are both waiting for approval. The first one is waiting for an institution to approve them. The second one is waiting for some internal signal, readiness, certainty, the perfect conditions to approve them to begin. And both of them, in completely different ways, have handed the terms of their financial life to someone or something outside themselves. One to a pricing model, one to an imagined future that never has to test itself against reality. That's the trap I want to talk about today. Not paying too much, not starting too late. Something quieter underneath both of those. It's the habit of asking to be approved before you've decided what you'd actually agree to. And once you see it, you start to notice how much of your money life is spent auditioning for systems that were never going to set fair terms on your behalf, because that was never their job. So let's slow this down, because the calm version of this is much more useful than the alarmed version. Let's go back to that income field, because it's the most concrete door into this. There's a story we tell ourselves about forms, which is that they're neutral. You put in true information, the system does something administrative with it, and that's the end. And sometimes that's exactly right. When you're filing taxes, applying for a mortgage, going through real underwriting, signing a legal document, accuracy isn't optional and it isn't a trap. It's the price of being taken seriously in a system that genuinely needs the number to function. I'm not here to tell you to lie on the things that matter. That's not the move, and it's not the point. But here is the part worth sitting with. A lot of the times you're asked for your income, you are not in one of those required moments. You're in an optional one, a pop-up that wants you to update your income to see if you qualify for an increase. A survey attached to an app you already use. A cheerful prompt that frames disclosure as a favor to you, as if telling them more is how you get more. And the income number, in those optional moments, is not just a fact about you. It's an input. It feeds a model. That model decides what limit to offer you, what rate to show you, which products to put in front of you, and how aggressively to market the next thing. A higher number doesn't just describe you to the system. It resorts you inside it. It moves you into a bracket where you get larger limits, premium invitations, and offers that arrive wrapped in the language of status. Notice what's actually happening there. You volunteer a number. The system uses that number to decide what terms to offer you back. And those terms were optimized for the institution's outcome, not yours. That's not a conspiracy. It's just what a pricing model is for. It would be strange if it worked any other way. The reason this matters is that we've been trained to read every yes from an institution as a compliment. A bigger limit feels like being told you're trusted. A premium card feels like being told you've arrived. An invitation feels like being chosen. And so we hand over the information that produces those yeses, and we feel good about it, and never quite ask the question that would change everything. What did this yes actually give me? And what did it quietly take in return? Because here's the thing about a higher credit limit. It doesn't make you wealthier. It doesn't lower your costs. It doesn't add $1 to your name. What it adds is rope. More room to carry a balance. More room to owe. More room to be profitable to lend to. The offer that feels like the institution betting on you is very often the institution betting on your tendency to use what's in front of you. So the first hidden cost of the approval trap is this. The form is not neutral, and optional disclosure is not free. Some of it you owe, to the taxman, to the underwriter, to the law. But a surprising amount of it you're simply giving away. And what comes back isn't a gift. It's a set of terms, dressed up to feel like one. Now I want to name the part that makes this trap so sticky. Because if it just felt bad, nobody would fall into it. Approval feels like progress. It feels almost identical to it. When your limit goes up, something in you relaxes. When the premium offer lands, something in you straightens up a little. When you get the bigger number, the better tier, the upgraded status, your nervous system reads it as movement, as if you've climbed. And here's the uncomfortable truth. In terms of your actual financial control, the money you keep, the costs you carry, the options you can exercise without asking anyone, nothing has changed. You haven't saved more. You haven't lowered an expense. You haven't built an engine that produces cash. You've just been re-rated by a system, and the system told you that you passed. This is the same machinery that runs in the second person, the one staring at the plan. Because researching a plan feels like progress too. Refining it feels like progress. Reading one more article, watching one more breakdown, choosing the strategy with the most elegant name, it all produces the same warm sensation of moving forward. You close the laptop feeling like you did something. And in a sense, you did. You did the part that has no risk in it. That's the link between our two people, and it's the heart of this whole thing. A bigger limit and a more detailed plan are doing the same job. They're both giving you the feeling of advancement without the exposure of advancement. They let you feel like you're winning without having to find out whether you would. And I want to be very precise here, because this is where people drift into self-blame. And self-blame is useless. The person redecorating the plan is not lazy. The person hovering over the income field is not stupid. They're both doing something deeply rational. They found the version of progress that can't reject them. An approved limit can't tell you your idea was wrong. A refined plan can't fail in front of anyone. Imagined execution is safe precisely because it never has to meet the world. The cost is just that it never meets the world. Let's stay with that second person a little longer, because their trap is the more intimate one. They have a future self, a clear one. They can describe the life, the freedom, the calm, the not checking the balance before buying groceries version of themselves. And they have a path in mind. They mostly know what the path requires. That's the strange part. It's usually not ignorance that stops people. It's that the imagined version of the path is so much more comfortable than the real first step. Because the real first step creates feedback, and feedback is the thing the dream is protecting you from. The moment you make the first transfer into the account you've been planning to open, you find out what it actually feels like to have that money be less available. The moment you make the first call to renegotiate something, you find out whether your nerve holds. The moment you launch the tiny first version of the business, one product, one customer, one small revenue test, you find out that the thing you imagined needs to be corrected. The first move replaces a perfect fantasy with a flawed reality you can actually improve. And that trade, perfect but fake, for flawed but real, feels in the moment like a downgrade. So we avoid it. We stay in the plan, where everything still works, where the numbers still compound cleanly, where nothing has gone slightly wrong yet. But the math doesn't wait for us to feel ready. The accounts that compound from the first deposit, not from the perfect deposit. The skills that develop from the clumsy first attempt, not the imagined fluent one. The longer the dream stays imaginary, the more the cost of delay quietly stacks, and it stacks in exactly the things that reward early, repeated iteration. Money, skills, reputation, the small businesses and side incomes that only get good by being run badly first.
So, if I'm going to tie this to money, and I promised I would because this is not a motivation speech, here's the conversion.
Every imagined financial future has hidden inside it a single most boring possible first action. Not the whole plan, the first move, the first transfer, the first opt-out, the first written rule you actually follow, the first call to ask what your current terms even are, the first account change, the first revenue test. One of those with a date attached. The dream wants to stay a dream because the dream can't be graded. Your job is not to perfect the dream. Your job is to find its smallest gradable piece and let it be graded this week. Now, somewhere in here, a lot of people make a wrong turn, and I want to head it off because it's a turn that feels productive and isn't. When people finally decide to get serious, they often start by collecting labels. They go looking for the right strategy, the named one, the branded one, the one with the acronym and the community around it. They want to know which category they belong to before they've changed a single variable in their actual life. And the financial content world is more than happy to oblige because there is an almost infinite supply of labels, and each one feels like a discovery. Here's the quiet thing underneath all of it. And I say this carefully because the labels aren't worthless. They're just secondary. Most of the strategies, when you strip the names off them, collapse into a very small set of real variables. How much you earn, how much of it you keep, your savings rate, how big your expense base is, whether you've built anything that produces cash flow on its own, the terms of your work, where and how you've structured your life. That's most of it. The elaborate taxonomies, the 4 this and the 7 that, are mostly different combinations of those few dials, given different names by different people. And that matters for our purposes for one reason only. Choosing a label feels like making a decision, but it usually isn't one. You can spend a month deciding which named strategy you are without ever having turned a single dial. The label is downstream, the variable is upstream, and the approval trap loves a good label because adopting an identity, I'm this kind of investor now, I'm following this approach, gives you that same hit of progress with none of the exposure. It's the plan redecorating instinct wearing a more sophisticated outfit. So I want to offer the unglamorous reframe. You do not need a better label first. You need to know which variable changes next. The label can come later, or never. Are you raising your savings rate? Lowering your expense base? Building a cash flow engine? Renegotiating your work terms? Pick the dial. Turn it. The name for what you're doing will sort itself out, and honestly, nobody but you will ever care what it was called. That's the whole role of stripping the labels. Not to dismiss the strategies, but to get you past the part where naming feels like doing, and back to the part where you change one real thing. Let me pull the thread tight before we get practical, because by now you can probably feel the shape of it. The income field, the bigger limit, the premium offer, the redecorated plan, the collected strategy labels. They look like 5 different things. They're one thing. In every single case, you are letting something outside yourself set the terms. The pricing model sets them when you over-disclose to it. The lender sets them when you read its yes as your win. The fantasy sets them when you let imagined progress stand in for the real kind. The label sets them when you adopt an identity instead of turning a dial. And in every case, the tell is the same. You feel forward motion. You feel relief or status or readiness or clarity. But your actual control, what you keep,
what you owe, what you can do without asking permission, hasn't moved.
The opposite of the approval trap isn't refusing every institution and burning your plans. That's just a different way of being controlled, this time by fear. The opposite of the approval trap is becoming the one who sets terms, knowing what you'll disclose and what you won't, knowing what a yes costs before you celebrate it. Knowing which dial you're turning and when. Knowing the first dated move and having actually made it. So let's build the tool for that. Calm, concrete, usable this week. I want you to run an audit, not a budget. You have enough of those. A terms audit. It's a set of questions you carry into any moment where money, disclosure, or a yes is on the table, and a 30-day window to make one thing real. The questions are short on purpose. You should be able to ask them standing at a counter or staring at a pop-up. Here are the 5. 1. What information am I giving away? Before you fill the field, before you tap update, ask whether this is a required disclosure or an optional one. Tax filings, real underwriting, legal applications? Required. Answer accurately, move on. Casual pop-ups, see if you qualify prompts. Income surveys attached to apps? Optional. And for optional ones, the default is no. Not out of paranoia. Out of the simple recognition that you don't owe a pricing model a better picture of how much rope to hand you. 2. What term is being offered back to me? When a yes arrives, a higher limit, a premium invitation, an upgrade, pause before the warm feeling closes the deal. Ask what it actually changes. Does this lower a cost? Add to what I keep? Or does it just add room to owe and a nicer sounding tier? If it's the second, you're allowed to decline a yes. You can cap a limit on purpose. You can leave the upgrade unopened. Declining an offer is not failing to qualify. It's setting a term. 3. What variable can I actually change? Strip the labels. Don't ask which strategy you are. Ask which dial moves. Savings rate, expense base, cash flow engine, work terms, structure. Pick one. Just one for now. The point isn't to optimize all of them. The point is to stop confusing naming with doing. 4. What first action would make this real instead of imagined? This is the one that breaks the second person out of their beautiful unfinished plan. Take the dial you picked and find its smallest gradable move. The first transfer, the first opt-out, the first renegotiation call, the first written rule, the first tiny revenue test. Then put a date on it, inside the next 30 days. Not the whole plan, the first move. A plan without a dated first action is not a plan. It's a place to hide. 5. Does this make my future calmer or tighter? This is the one that keeps the whole audit honest, because not every more is a yes, and not every no is safety. A bigger limit can feel like security and quietly make your future tighter. A smaller, deliberate choice can feel like less and actually make your future calmer. So at the end, hold the decision up against that single test, calmer or tighter. You'll usually know immediately, and the knowing is the point. Run those 5 on the next real moment that comes up. The next form, the next offer, the next time you catch yourself redecorating a plan instead of starting it. You don't need all 5 every time. Most days, one of them is enough to catch you in the act. So let's go back to our 2 people one last time. The first one, hovering over the income field, doesn't need to become someone who lies or someone who hides. They need to become someone who knows the difference between a question they owe an answer to and a question that's just fishing, and who reads a yes as a set of terms, not a compliment. The second one, staring at the perfect, untouched plan, doesn't need more research, a better strategy, or a cleaner notebook. They need one dated first move, made this week, badly, in the real world, where it can finally be graded and improved. Both of them have spent a long time asking the same quiet question. Will they approve me? The bank, the model, the future, the version of themselves that's finally ready. And that question, however reasonable it feels, always leaves the terms in someone else's hands.
The shift, the entire shift, is to a different question. Not will they approve me, but what terms am I agreeing to, and what terms can I set? That's not a rejection of institutions or plans or strategies. It's just you stepping into the seat where the terms get decided, instead of waiting outside it, hoping to be let in. Financial control doesn't start when someone finally says yes to you. It starts the moment you stop treating approval as the goal and start treating terms as the thing you design. So this week, find one form, one offer, or one untouched plan. Run the 5 questions, decline one optional disclosure, or cap one limit on purpose, or make one dated first move. Just one. Let it be small. Let it be real. And notice how different it feels to be the one setting the terms. Calmer, not tighter, now that you finally know that's a seat you are always allowed to sit in.